Han Li took Nangong Wan from the Yanhui sect successfully. After settling her down safely, he was worried something might happen to his concubine, Mu Pailing, so he returned to Chacha City alone. Unexpectedly, someone actually dared, right in front of Han Li, to harass Mu Pailing. "Young master, you're finally back." When Mu Pailing opened her beautiful eyes, she saw Han Li standing before her, and couldn't help but exclaim in pleasant surprise, "You and senior brother Lu didn't leave as we agreed. How could I not come back?" Han Li sighed, and said with a hint of helplessness, would arrive. Senior Gu, as a member of the Heavenly Tao Alliance, and a Nascent Soul cultivator in Chacha City, had no choice but to stay behind, to discuss countermeasures with the other factions. So I was left stranded here as well. Mu Pailing bit her red lips slightly, and said cautiously, "In that case, you two are indeed not to blame. However, senior brother Lu, he is now." Just as Han Li was about to continue asking, a look of surprise suddenly appeared on his face. He immediately stopped his questioning, just as Mu Pailing was startled, not yet understanding Han Li's intention. Suddenly from outside the pavilion's quiet room, a young man's loud shout was heard. "Is fellow Taoist Mu present? This is Bai Shujin, requesting to see fellow Taoist Mu." "Who is this person?" "Someone you've recently met." As his immense spiritual sense swept outwards, and discovered a refined-looking core formation stage youth, standing just outside. He was facing the pavilion, standing calmly. He couldn't help but ask thoughtfully in a calm voice. The moment Wu Pilan heard the man's voice, her face instantly turned pale. Now, after hearing Han Li's question, she hurriedly began to explain. "Young master, please don't misunderstand. This person is a disciple of an elder from the Tianchi sect. He first saw me by chance a few days ago, and has been pestering me endlessly ever since. I already told him that I am your handmaiden, young master, but he still pursues me relentlessly. I'll go and drive him away right now." "So that's what's been happening. Does senior brother Lu know about this?" Han Li asked with a placid expression. "I have told senior Lu about this matter, but senior Lu seems to know that elder from the Tianchi sect, and he appears to be somewhat wary of him. He told me to just feign civility for the time being, and that we would the position of an elder in the heavenly revelation." To say something, but the elder simply clasped his hands in a salute, and left gracefully with the young man in the white robe. His brows furrowed deeply. The other party was being so mysterious. It seemed they knew something, but had also misunderstood something, as if they mistakenly believed that for some time now, he had been right here in the city, and was deliberately hiding himself. Han Li rubbed his chin. For a moment, he couldn't quite make sense of it. Therefore, he didn't try to stop them again. But after some consideration, he returned to the pavilion with Mu Pailing. "Where is senior brother Lu now?" As soon as Han Li entered the pavilion, he asked calmly. The previous matter was not mentioned at all, as if it were instantly forgotten. "I heard the battle on the front lines has become dire again. The seniors have gone to discuss countermeasures with them." "Where are they discussing these countermeasures?" Han Li asked with some interest. "It is in the council hall of Tinian City. I know the whereabouts of that senior sister." He immediately instructed the woman with a few words and left the pavilion. The so-called council hall was actually built in the very center of the city, atop a huge, high platform. It was extremely eye-catching, but aside from matters concerning the Nine Nations Alliance and its very survival, this building was generally just a symbolic place. Few people ever came here, but after more than 100 years, when news of the Mulan people's second invasion arrived, the upper echelons of the Nine Nations Alliance opened this great hall without hesitation, and summoned cultivators from other factions. And Han Li took a couple more glances at that yellow-robed old man. He couldn't help but sigh inwardly. This old man was precisely old ancestor Linghu from the former Yellow Maple Valley. Old ancestor Linghu saw that Han Li's expression was as calm as ever, not revealing a single trace of anything unusual. It was unclear if he failed to recognize the mere Foundation establishment disciple from the past, or if he was simply shrewd enough to be able to completely hide his emotions. His gaze shifted within the hall. Besides these few people, in the very center of the main hall, sat an old man with a purple face, and a graceful and noble beauty in court attire. When Han Li's spiritual sense briefly probed the two of them, he was inwardly startled. These two people were both at the mid-Nascent Soul stage of cultivation. They must be the ones in charge of the Nine Nations Alliance. At the same time that Han Li was scanning the cultivators in the hall, the other cultivators in the hall were also sizing up this newly arrived young man in the main hall. Most people were clearly slightly surprised by Han Li's youthful appearance. After all, a cultivation technique suitable for male cultivators, that can also grant eternal youth, is truly a rare sight. "Junior brother Han, you finally arrived. Please, have a seat." we are with Sect Master Wu and the others, discussing the matter of the Mulan people. The female cultivator greeted with a smile. The fire dragon boy to the side also showed a faint smile, and nodded kindly. Han Li smiled calmly, cupped his fists slightly towards the other cultivators in the room, and sat on the wooden chair next to the female cultivator. This must be fellow Taoist Han from the Drifting Cloud sect. I am Wu Peng of the 100 Leaves sect. We learned from Brother Lu that you, fellow Taoist, actually entered the Nascent Soul stage in just over 200 years. You are truly a prodigy among us Tianan cultivators. Perhaps you truly have a chance of attaining the great Tao. This cultivator waited until Han Li was seated, and then said to Han Li with a smile. Although Han Li's current cultivation level was a step lower, he dared not underestimate his potential. Sect Master Wu, you are too kind. I was merely fortunate to have entered the Nascent Soul stage. How could I dare speak of attaining the great Tao? The 100 Leaves sect is, within the Nine Nations Alliance, another major sect on par with the Harmonious Unity sect. Han Li did not dare to be arrogant, and replied with a few polite and humble words. But as he said this, his gaze also, on the middle-aged beautiful woman next to the old man, swept over briefly. Since this old man is the sect master of the Beiyi sect, then this beautiful woman is most likely a cultivator from the Huayi sect. Indeed, just as Han Li thought this, Wu Peng turned and said, "This is Madame He from the Huayi sect. She is temporarily in charge of the affairs of the Nine Nations Alliance." The old man then took the other Taoist friends and introduced the other cultivators in the hall to Han Li one by one. When he introduced old ancestor Linghu of the Yellow Maple Valley, this old ancestor responded without any expression. He showed no particular reaction. Han Li's heart stirred slightly, but he also just nodded with his usual expression. After introducing everyone, Wu Peng's expression turned serious. He said that Taoist friend Han had come at just the right time. We are currently discussing the war. The situation is far more serious than we originally anticipated. I heard that Elder Yu at the front lines. They have suffered another major defeat. Even the grand defensive formations at two important locations were forcefully broken by giant beasts controlled by the enemy. We have lost many cultivators, even Taoist friend Huan from the Dark Shadow sect, and even died in this battle. Since this war with the mages began, he is the second one to have fallen. A fellow Nascent Soul cultivator. It's clear that the Mulan people are coming on strong this time. Our alliance urgently needs all of you fellow Taoists to lend your full support. Hearing these grave words from the Bei sect elder, the smiles on all the cultivators' faces vanished. A solemn atmosphere immediately filled the grand hall. Sect Master Wu, we have also received some news regarding this matter. After all, the ones fighting the mages on the front lines also include disciples from our various sects who are on rotation in the Gui Alliance. However, as for the specific circumstances of our fellow Taoist fall, we are not entirely clear on the details. Brother Wu, could you please elaborate on this matter? You see, suffering consecutive losses in such a short time of Nascent Soul cultivators is truly unbelievable. Could it be that the enemy's high-level mages have already been deployed in large numbers this early? A stern-faced old man in green robes asked grimly. His voice was somewhat hoarse. Upon hearing this, Han Li took a few more glances at the man. He recalled Wu Peng's introduction from earlier. This man is an elder from the Yulan sect of the demonic Tao. He wondered what his relationship was with Liu Yu and Han Yunzi. Have the enemy's high-level mages all been deployed? I did not receive this news. But fellow Taoist Feng and the new fellow Taoist who fell previously, all of them, were killed in one-on-one combat with the enemy. They were not besieged. Hearing the green-robed elder's words, Wu Peng said with a peculiar expression on his face, "Impossible. Even if defeated by a mid-stage Nascent Soul cultivator, they should still be able to escape with their lives. Could it be that a divine master from the Mulan people was the one who attacked?" The green-robed elder was silent for a moment upon hearing this and said, "No, it was just two early-stage Nascent Soul cultivators. But these two, who attacked one after another, are a bit strange. Not only are their spiritual techniques incredibly powerful, far surpassing cultivators of the same rank, but they also use an extremely bizarre treasure. After our two fellow Taoists were utterly defeated, the moment their Nascent Souls emerged from their bodies, they were trapped by the opponent using this treasure. They couldn't even use their teleportation ability. That is how they perished." Wu Peng seemed to have long expected someone to ask about this. He sighed and explained, "Their Nascent Souls couldn't use teleportation. What kind of treasure is that? Is it an ancient treasure, or a Dharma treasure?" One person, upon hearing these words, gasped sharply and asked in disbelief. When the others, including Han Li, heard this, their expressions changed. "You must understand, The reason why Nascent Soul cultivators are so difficult to kill is because after their Nascent Soul leaves the body, they can use teleportation to escape and vanish. But now, a treasure that can counter this divine ability has actually appeared. How could this not greatly alarm all the cultivators present? As for what kind of treasure it is specifically, the disciples from our sect who were watching the battle earlier are also unclear. They only said that, when those two people raised their hands, a black and red light would appear and disappear without a trace. It was impossible to defend against. Moreover, Wu Peng pondered for a moment. A hesitant look appeared on his face. Sect Master Wu, at this point in time, is there still something you find inconvenient to state plainly? The jade-robed elder, seeing this, showed a displeased expression. My brother doesn't find it inconvenient to speak plainly. It's just that he finds it a bit unbelievable. That's why he was hesitating. Allow me to explain this matter, Mrs. Che of the Huayi sect said with a smile, suddenly speaking up to help Wu Peng out of his predicament. Both of their sects belonged to the Nine Nations Alliance, so it was natural for her to help him out a bit. Han Li, upon hearing this, felt his curiosity greatly piqued, and it was much the same for everyone else present. Everyone perked up and watched intently at Lady Qi's next words. This is what happened. Some of the disciples watching the battle from the front discovered that those 7th-level Nascent Soul practitioners had very strange appearances. They also seemed to directly devour the living souls of those killed in battle, and they spared no one, whether they were practitioners or cultivators. Therefore, Sect Master Wu suspects that those two are not human, but are transformations of some other kind of creature. But on these two, there was no obvious demonic or ghostly aura, so those disciples couldn't make an accurate judgment. But speaking of which, during this affair, the sudden appearance of those few exceptionally powerful and savage giant beasts must also be related to these strange practitioners, right? For this reason, we suspect the Mulan people may have colluded with other forces, which is why they were able to launch a large-scale invasion of our Tianan. She said with a light sigh, Lady, by non-human creatures, are you referring to shape-shifting demonic beasts? Upon hearing Lady Qi's words, everyone in the hall was greatly shocked. Amidst their horror, old ancestor Linghu asked in a deep voice, I believe so. But even if they aren't demonic beasts, are also evil cultivators who practice some demonic arts. If that's the case, I would rather run into demonic beasts. Otherwise, it would be even more troublesome. Wu Peng said with a grim expression. Sect Master Wu, when did you receive this information? Han Li, who had been silent all this time, asked slowly, his expression shifting. This information came along with the last battle report. Fellow Taoist Han, what is your intention in asking this? Wu Peng straightened his posture and stroked the long beard under his chin, finding it a bit strange. It's nothing. I just feel that, regardless of whether those strange spellcasters are human or demon, since they dare to act so brazenly, they must have already made their move. They are not afraid of us discovering their identities. It seems, the Mulan people will not be fighting a war of attrition like before. They will most likely launch a lightning strike, seeking out our main cultivator force to decide the battle in one fell swoop. Could it be that some great change has occurred in the Mulan grasslands? Han Li rested his chin on his hand and said thoughtfully. Upon hearing Han Li's analysis, Wu Peng and his companions' expressions changed drastically. They looked at each other in shock. The other cultivators also felt a jolt in their hearts. What Han Li said, these old monsters naturally all understood. The Mulan people's previous invasions were all wars of attrition. Basically, each major war would last for at least a year, and at most, drag on for more than 10 years. Whether it was the cultivators of the Nine Nations Alliance or the Mulan spellcasters, both sides did their utmost to avoid a single, decisive battle between their main forces, because if they did so, either one side would be completely annihilated, or both sides would suffer devastating losses, and it was usually the latter. The Tianan cultivators and the Mulan spellcasters could not afford such a heavy blow to their strength, especially since the Mulan people are composed of numerous tribes, and the Tianan cultivators are an alliance of various large and small sects. Neither side could achieve perfect unity. But looking at it now, the Mulan people's aggressive onslaught this time is indeed vastly different from their previous invasions, coupled with those savage giant beasts, and the appearance of strange spellcasters. No matter how you look at it, it seems some change has occurred on the Mulan side. What Han Li said makes sense. It seems something is indeed off about the Mulan people. We cannot be careless. All the sects in Tianan must be mobilized. A second batch of reinforcements must be sent over immediately. Otherwise, if we are picked off one by the Mulan people, it would be a disaster. I hope that after you fellow Taoists return, You will explain this to your sects and stress the need for swift action. Relying on the strength of our alliance alone, we cannot hold out for long. After a moment, Wu Peng gave a bitter smile, and said with a heavy heart, although what Taoist Han said is possible, it is, after all, still just speculation. Therefore, except for the fellow Taoists present here, everyone should keep the matters discussed today confidential for the time being, to avoid causing unnecessary chaos. However, if the Mulan people are truly determined to wage a great war against us, their highest-level divine masters will surely be mobilized as well. These Nascent Soul, late-stage mages, are not something that people like us can handle. I will notify Elder Wei Wuya of our alliance, and see if we can gather the 3 great cultivators to deal with this matter. After Lady Che considered it, she also spoke up, agreeing that what was said is reasonable. We must not delay. Let's send word to our sects immediately after we return. A gaunt old man with a rather grim and weary face nodded and said in agreement. The other cultivators also knew the matter was of great importance, and had no objections. They all agreed one after another. After that, everyone discussed some related details, and decided to first send out a batch of reinforcements to delay the advance of the Xia Mulan people, to buy time for the major powers of Tianan to gather their forces. Then the council concluded the meeting, and they began to leave in a hurry. Han Li and the cultivator with the surname Lu, and the fire dragon child were walking side by side. But just as they walked out of the main hall's gates, his expression suddenly shifted, and his brows furrowed slightly. What's wrong, junior brother? The cultivator with the surname Lu turned his head and saw Han Li's expression, and couldn't help but ask with some surprise. It's nothing. An old acquaintance wants to see me. I'm afraid I'll have to go and meet them. Senior brother and brother Lan, please go on ahead. I will be right back, Han Li said, raising an eyebrow. But he immediately spoke as if nothing was wrong. Then junior brother should go on his own. I'll head back first to our fellow members of the Heavenly Tao Alliance, to inform them about the matters discussed this time. Then I will pass the news back to our seniors, to see how our various factions in the Heavenly Tao Alliance will ultimately handle this matter. The female cultivator nodded. She smiled and said. The fire dragon boy's lips curled up. A cheeky grin appeared on his face. Seeing this, Han Li cupped his fists. Then he slowly walked off in another direction. His figure quickly faded into the distance. After cultivator Lu stepped out of the main hall, he had only taken a few steps. When he glanced in the direction, Han Li had disappeared. What's wrong, brother Lu? Are you a little worried? The fire dragon boy beside him saw this and gave a teasing smile. He asked with a grin. Worried? What is there to be worried about? Cultivator Lu's heart stirred, but he asked back with an impassive expression. Even if I don't say it, brother Lu, you should be able to guess it yourself. This fellow Taoist Han used to be from Huangfeng Valley, and it seems that old freak Linghu, just like your esteemed senior brother, are both people whose time is running out. Right now in Huangfeng Valley, besides old freak Linghu, there is no second Nascent Soul cultivator. I'm afraid old freak Linghu must be burning with anxiety. After all, if it were a small sect, it wouldn't matter. But for a great sect like Huangfeng Valley, if there's no Nascent Soul cultivator to hold down the fort, not only will it fall into a sharp decline, it's even highly possible that the disaster of sect annihilation could occur. And just now, someone clearly sent a voice transmission to fellow Taoist Han. It would be strange if it weren't old monster Linghu. The fire dragon boy said with a sneer afterward. Cultivator Lan, how did you know about junior brother Han's past? He doesn't seem to have ever told you about this, has he? The female cultivator did not answer directly. Instead, she pondered for a moment. She asked in return, why would I need you to tell me, brother La, when someone like him suddenly appears in your esteemed sect, so young and newly promoted, an elder? Our ancient sword sect would naturally investigate. It's not as if it's some big secret. It was easy enough to find out. The woman had no intention of hiding it, and told him frankly. When the female cultivator heard what the fire dragon boy said, she found it hard to say anything more on the matter, but after some thought, she still shook her head and said, for junior brother Han to go see an old acquaintance from his past is not a strange thing. If he had wanted to return to Yellow Maple Valley back then, he would have gone back long ago. Why would he wait until today? That may be so, but that old monster Linghu is as cunning as a fox. Since he was willing to invite fellow Taoist Han, he must be somewhat confident that he can persuade him. The fire dragon boy said dismissively. The female cultivator fell silent. After a moment, a trace of worrying finally appeared on his face. He let out a long sigh and said, let's just leave it to fate. If junior brother Han really insists on returning to Yellow Maple Valley, could senior brother and I really tie him up? and prevent him from returning, he said with a wry smile. At this time, Han Li was walking down a rather secluded side street. He was constantly looking from side to side for something. Suddenly, he stopped in his tracks. His gaze landed on a 2-story building. This building wasn't very tall, only about 60 or 70 feet high. In front of the entrance was a small sign. On it was written a large character for tea. This was a tea house, and outside the building stood 2 men in yellow robes at the foundation establishment stage. They were looking towards Han Li. Han Li gave a faint smile and walked over. "Greetings, Senior Han. The martial uncle is inside, waiting for you." When the 2 men saw Han Li approach, they immediately cupped their hands respectfully and said, "Understood." Han Li nodded and walked inside impassively. The entire building was deathly quiet, as if it were completely empty. After a moment's hesitation, Han Li went up to the 2nd floor. The moment he appeared, he saw that on the 2nd floor, aside from 1 person, it was equally deserted. The only person seated there was dressed in a yellow robe. His complexion was sallow. It was none other than the one from the Great Hall, old ancestor Linghu, from whom he had just parted. At this moment, he was sitting at an 8 immortals table in the very center of the 2nd floor, holding a cup of clear tea, and slowly savoring it. Han Li's eyes flickered a few times. He walked up without any hesitation. In a few steps, he was opposite old ancestor Linghu, and sat down steadily without a word. In front of him, there was also a green teacup that had already been prepared. Old ancestor Linghu said nothing. Instead, with a single wave of his hand, a teapot that was on the table floated up lightly. The spout tilted and poured half a cup into the teacup in front of Han Li. Then, the teapot floated back down onto the table on its own. "This tea house's homemade phosphorus tea is quite good. You might as well have a taste first," old ancestor Linghu said with his eyes slightly narrowed. Glancing at Han Li slowly, Han Li smiled. He picked up the teacup before him without protest. The clear, emerald green tea was indeed excellent. It was truly a cut above ordinary lemon tea. After Han Li took a sip, he said with a calm expression, "Heh, it seems fellow Taoist Han is also a person who enjoys tea. For this old man to invite you to meet here, it seems I have come to the right place." Old ancestor Linghu gently put down his teacup and said softly, "You invited me here, not just to have me taste the fine tea, I presume. If you have something to say, just say it directly." Han Li had no intention of beating around the bush. He said calmly. This old ancestor Linghu had obviously recognized him long ago, and he had also vaguely guessed the other party's intention for inviting him. "Since fellow Taoist is so direct, I won't beat around the bush either. I wonder if fellow Taoist Han would be willing to return to Yellow Maple Valley and take up the position of an elder." Old ancestor Linghu said unhurriedly, as if he were just mentioning some trivial matter. "Return to Yellow Maple Valley." Han Li's face showed not the slightest change in expression. He just lowered his head, looking at the teacup in his hand, saying nothing, his face devoid of expression. Regardless of who was right or wrong back then, I don't wish to dwell on it. I just want to tell you, fellow Taoist Han, that my remaining lifespan is short. In 20 years at most, this old man will pass away. As long as you are willing to return, this Yellow Maple Valley will in fact be yours. Fellow Taoist, surely you wouldn't, because of a small matter from back then, hold a grudge to this day, would you? A golden light flashed in old ancestor Linghu's eyes. He slowly said, regarding the matters of the past, "I, Han, stopped caring about them long ago. If I were in your position, fellow Taoist, I might have done the same. But now, I have already joined the Fallen Cloud sect, and I have no intention of changing my allegiance. Fellow Taoist Linghu, you had better find another cultivator." Han Li raised his head, staring at old ancestor Linghu. Shaking his head, he said, "This old man naturally knows that you are now in the Fallen Cloud sect, but the Fallen Cloud sect still has 2 elders. Wouldn't you be constrained at every turn there? How can that compare to the pleasure of wielding the great power of a leader?" Old ancestor Linghu sneered, and said, "I think you have misunderstood one thing. Fellow Taoist, I am not one to jockey for power. That is not why I join a sect. I, Han, merely wish to find a place suitable for cultivation, that is all. As for wielding the great power of a sect, I have no interest." Han Li pursed his lips. A faint, sarcastic smile touched the corners of his mouth.